we've seen in a generation. But it's not happening. Why? Because of the progressives, or two senators, or leadership? Let's ask somebody who is very much in the mix. Representative Khanna, Deputy Whip for the Progressive Caucus. Congressman, always a pleasure to have you, and I appreciate you giving straight talk and dealing in good faith with this audience for weeks on this issue. Thank you.
I've been honored to be on.
So, Congressman, to cut to the quick, how long will you guys stand in the way of making history with this legislation, especially when it comes to blowing your own deadlines?
Chris, you're absolutely right that it's historic legislation. I think we're almost there. Within a week, we will be there. You know who was pitch perfect today was the president. He came in, he touted both the Build Back Better bill and the infrastructure bill. When people started chanting, vote, vote, vote today, he didn't say that. He held up his finger and he said both, and he said we need to get this done over the next week. He understands where the party is, he understands clearly the divisions, and he took a prudent approach of how to bring us together over a week.
Is the history being lost on the Progressive Caucus? If you were to get half of everything that you originally asked for, you would be getting more on climate and literally a laundry list of people's most pressing concerns that we haven't seen in a generation.
You're right, Chris, and that's why there hasn't been any real progressive who's come out and said we're opposed to the 1.75 top line. I thought the president was so eloquent, particularly when he spoke about education. This is the first time in America we're going to have universal preschool. Every kid is going to get to go to preschool. We're going to invest in childcare, and we're going to have the biggest investment in climate ever. The progressives are on board. What is the issue? The question is, let's just get it written so that it doesn't get further diluted in the Senate. And I think that's a legitimate concern, to wait a week, make sure all 50 senators are on board, and get this passed by the end of next week.
What is it about you Democrats that makes you love price tag politics? The only thing that starts to dampen public interest and appreciation is the price tags. You see what's been happening with independent voters. People get sticker shock. Why not just keep focused on all of the gives instead of the get here, you know, in terms of what the price tag is going to be?
You're right. You know what I've been saying? This is less than 2% of our GDP. We're a rich country, and for less than 2% of our GDP, we can give every kid a shot in this country. We can have childcare, we can have climate investments, we can give seniors hearing aids, we can give more people an opportunity to go to community college. And the fight between moderates and progressives is, do we spend 1% of our GDP or 2% of our GDP? But ultimately, the role of government to do good is what's at stake, and it's going to be historic when we deliver.
What is your level of confidence in these two senators, and really specifically the one who's been quiet, Senator Sinema? Do you believe that she is playing above board?
I do today, because I had colleagues who I really trust, Joe Neguse, Pramila Jayapal. They sat down with her. They left pretty assured that she wants to make sure that this deal goes forward. This is the first time I felt like that, and I really trust both Joe and Pramila. So I actually feel more confident that we are aligned on the deal. I think what is unfortunate, Chris, just being candid and with straight shooting, is that we're having these negative headlines, and we're so close to doing something historic. But what people are reading about is, oh, Democrats are fighting and not delivering and missing deadlines. We got to get past that and talk about what we're actually going to deliver, come together and start talking about all the good things we're going to do. That's my concern, not whether the deal will happen.
One quick follow, and then I want to get to the big surprise you gave us today. You say you trust her today, which is, you know, I guess in politics that's the best you can hope for, but not enough to vote today on the infrastructure bill.
Well, it's not just her, it's also Senator Manchin, who I've always thought is a straight shooter, but he's out there saying, well, we're negotiating in good faith. And so there's still things that have to be worked out the details, and that is, do we have strong climate provisions? Do we have dental and vision for seniors? Do we have Medicare negotiation? Now, if we just say, okay, we're going to do the infrastructure bill today as opposed to a few days from now, and then basically give Manchin and Sinema a lot more power in finalizing that deal, why would we do that? Why not just all be part of the process, get a deal that everyone feels good with? I don't think that's the end of the world to wait a few more days to have that process.
Now, look, I've been saying all along, you guys are delaying history. Whatever you get here, you're going to be giving people more than they've seen in a generation. That is not surprising to me. What was surprising to me is what happened today in your hearing with big oil executives. First, I want to play for people a little bit of what your angle of accountability was here, because it wound up leading to a huge development. Here it is.
You're funding these groups, and they're really having an impact. You know, they're spending millions of dollars in Congress to kill electric vehicles, and they're spending millions of dollars against the methane gas. And you could do something here. You could tell them to knock it off for the sake of the planet. You could end it. You could end that lobbying. Would any of you take the opportunity to look at API and say, stop it? Any of you? Will you commit to, could you commit, any of you?
So my take on it was, Congressman, that they just were going to take their beating and go home. You know, let's just let this guy stop talking and get out of here. And then you and Congresswoman Maloney met and came out and said, you know what, we're going to subpoena you for documents on these third parties and where they're getting their money and what this messaging is about, because you're not being straight with us. Where did that move come from, and what do you think about swinging that big a stick?
It was the first time that oil executives have testified in front of Congress under oath, Chris. Can you believe that? They've never come before Congress on climate disinformation before. And I was actually giving them an opportunity. Here they are, they come out, they say they're for tackling climate change, they're for the Paris Accords, they're for electric vehicles, they're for a methane tax, and then they are funding a group. $10 million Shell is putting into it, Exxon is putting into it, Chevron's putting into it. The head of that group is there, and I'm saying, tell him to stop the advertising against electric vehicles. Tell him not to engage in climate disinformation, and not one of them is willing to tell him to stop. And they weren't willing to admit some of the past misstatements that were clearly climate denialism. So Chairwoman Maloney and I talked, and we said, we have to subpoena. We have to get these documents. We're going to get the documents. And unfortunately, it's turning out like a big tobacco moment.
Well, you know, it's interesting that you make that the analog. They better hope not. But the paper has to be there. It's going to take you some time. They've got a lot of money and a lot of lawyers, but you do have the U.S. government behind you. We will be tracking this. You are always welcome to make the case. Huge implications for the American people. Congressman Khanna, you are really right at the crux of some very big goings-on in our government. It's good to have you. Thank you for taking the opportunity.
Thank you, Chris. Safe travels in Italy.